All right, have not fans. This has been the most requested topic for me to do ever since I started my blog and Facebook page. It's been a topic of controversy ever since it was introduced in the series back in season 3. Was Amanda Crier's death a result of a suicide or a homicide? Now, I'm going to be upfront and tell you that I do not believe that Amanda's death was the result of a suicide. I believe that she was murdered by who is the question that has been left unanswered ever since HAHN discovered that Amanda's body was still in her room, and after the police apparently did some kind of investigation in the room. But here's the thing that got me. We never got the results of an autopsy on Amanda's body because there are a few key things that need to be pointed out. Number one, remember that Quincy picked up Amanda from the Crier mansion and she disappeared for a little while because she went to get a death tattoo, which would have had the names of her family members on it: Jim, Catherine, Wyatt. And remember, she told Quincy that her plan was to kill her parents due to a bunch of things, just as, not getting her inheritance. And then at some point she even said just ridiculous things about the family that made Quincy wonder, okay, this girl is really crazy. All right, so remember the death tattoo that has gone unseen, but she does have it. Number two, remember that she was apparently pregnant by Professor Cannon after he raped her back in season 1. Jim did see the pregnancy test in Amanda and Candace's bathroom back in season 1. She was apparently, pregnant after she took that test. I mean, Candace told her not to freak out because there's no way she would have known that she was pregnant that quick. And even though Jim killed off Professor Cannon at this point, even if he did make her pregnant, then it's kind of irrelevant at this point. He got his revenge on the professor. All right. The last point I would like to make, or at least the last important point in regards to Amanda's death, if she was killed by somebody else, as a result of a gunshot, because we did hear a gun go off, where the heck is the gun? I mean, the police apparently searched the entire room, did their thing. Even the cleaning crew went in later on to move everything out of the room to the attic. Was it the attic or basement? I think it was the attic. No gun was ever brought up or mentioned again ever since we saw the gun that she was pointing at her head as she was running around the house that night. So it leads me to another point to make about this entire thing. The fact that, number one, we have no autopsy results. Apparently, she was put in the body bag. Then within the next couple of days, a funeral, and that was it. I wanted to say that I thought the funeral would at least be half to, maybe even a full episode's length of time. But instead, we get the opening of an episode where Candace shows up to the funeral just as, the Criers, the Harringtons, everybody else are coming away from the cemetery. So I will say that the build-up for the funeral was good because remember, right before the funeral, if I'm not mistaken, Wyatt said something offhand that pissed Jim off. He got up and he literally beat his ass, which was hilarious. And that was pretty much it. I thought we really would have got to see some different things at the funeral, like, they would be at the church or whatever they would hold the funeral. Apparently, it seemed that I was off on that mark because I thought it would have been a great scene if, let's say, they're in the middle of the funeral and Candace shows up out of nowhere and Jim and everybody's just pissed off. That would have been a good dynamic, or the ending of one episode, the clip, how Tyler Perry ends on cliffhangers where Candace could have came at the last minute. That would have been good. But hey, that didn't seem to be the case. I mean, she did show up right as everybody's leaving the cemetery, so that's almost like the theory I had in mind. But again, I really thought they would have focused more on the funeral itself. Now, moving on to the night of the shooting. If there was another killer in the house, I guess you're asking who was the killer. I had narrowed it down to about 3 people, one being Professor Cannon. That would have made sense because the last time we had seen him up to that point was after he got stabbed in the back by Amanda in the park. So that could have been his way of ending everything, of being tortured or being stalked by Amanda. But the reason I doubt it is because 2 things. Number one, I don't believe he knew that Amanda was forcibly moved out of her apartment with Candace back to the Crier house. Number 2, why would he go to the Crier house? I mean, let's say if he didn't knew that Amanda moved out, I don't think he would go to the Crier mansion knowingly, just because, that's where her parents live, and that would just be going right into the lion's den. So again, I did think it would have been an interesting way of bringing Professor Cannon full circle back into the series to get his revenge on Amanda's revenge if he was, let's say, hiding out in Amanda's room. or, maybe in like the bathroom or the closet or something like that. And then in the middle of the night, when she went back to the room, that's when the shooting happened. And maybe both of them got shot, or maybe he just left. Again, this was a theory I created back before the ending of season 3, just because it did seem kind of cool. Because in her room, Amanda's closet door was open, and I believe the door to the bathroom in the room was either open or closed. That could have been where one of the bodies was hiding. But again, since that theory didn't happen, just got to cut that out. But I will say this much: whoever killed Amanda had to have left the room without a scratch on him, because remember, the hallway, Wyatt got up in the middle of the night after the gunshot, checked on his family, he checked on his mom, he checked on Amanda, and closed the door to her room. He only saw the silhouette of Amanda's face covered with hair. It was too dark for him to see anything else like the blood, so he closed the door. If somebody else was in that room at the time of the shooting, they again must have not gotten a scratch on them, because there was no blood at all in the hallway, nor from the top floor or the second floor of the house down to the bottom where the front door was cracked open after Jim was kidnapped by Warlock's crew. The thing is, whoever came into the house to do the killing, they could have, number one, went through the front door and left a crack in it, because remember, when Jim was kidnapped before the shooting, he wasn't able to fully close the door. I believe he left a crack on the door on purpose, just to see, if Candace was out there, then when it went back into the house. So when he got kidnapped, the crack in the door was still open. But my best bet is that whoever killed Amanda went through the back entrance, which was the servant entrance or the maid's entrance, which I'm suspecting Celine has a key to. So that leads to my next point. Professor Kanan was my number one suspect, and I thought Quincy, but overall it didn't make sense for Quincy to even come back to the house. Not to mention that we know later that he was in Veronica's house the entire time. Number 3 is either Celine or Carlos. I mean, wow, you really got to look back into the episodes of season 3 at the very beginning, when Hannah comes down the stairs after finding Amanda dead. Celine is on the phone apparently with Carlos, telling him that she has everything under control and she knows what she's doing. And I'm betting he's probably showing concern because the day before, Jim told her off to her face that he wanted nothing to do with Celine or Carlos. And it just goes to show that a lot of things went down between Jim, Celine, and his son that he doesn't claim. If I'm not mistaken, he also fired him from the campaign office as well. So Carlos is like, Mom, what are you doing there after he treated us that way? He's like, oh, don't worry about it. And then the fact that she was acting so strange and aggressive during the interrogation scenes, wanting to get out of the house as soon as possible. They say that the criminal always returns to the scene of the crime. I'm just going to leave that right there. So again, Professor Cannon was my top suspect, but I'm doubtful of that, him being a killer. Quincy never had enough solid evidence to say that he was the one to kill Amanda. And then either Celine or Carlos, one of those two. It really seems that, I don't know, they might have done it. Just because, Jim always cared for Amanda and Wyatt, but never his other children. So, hey, it could be the way of eliminating the competition. Hey, you never know. But in any case, it just, to me, until Tyler Perry himself declares that, hey, Amanda's death was a suicide and that's that, I don't think I'll believe it. Because again, if you know me since I've been writing the blog, I'm not one to just let a theory die until I have full evidence of it I don't know, I guess you could say I haven't come to acceptance for what we've been given in the show. I mean, yeah, it's been mentioned it was suicide, but if you just look at the way the blood was scattered across the room, from the big puddle on Amanda's bed to the dresser, the floor where the huge puddle was in the carpet where Hannah's shoes literally got soaked in blood, and then if I'm not mistaken, there's blood all over the curtains as well. It just you cannot tell me that Amanda just shot herself. All the blood was in that position spread out in the room, and she was curled up on the bed. No. I cannot believe that. There was something that went on in that room, and perhaps it might be, talked about later on in the series. I would really like that because, there are a lot of loose ends and unanswered questions within the series so far, such as, David calling Veronica's mother multiple times in season 2, yet we are, in season 4 right now, but she hasn't been mentioned or seen yet. I just hope that Amanda's departure from the show wasn't one of those unanswered loose end situations, because again, she does have a prominent role in the show even though she's not there, being that if anybody even brings her up in terms of how she died, Jim will literally go off the handle. So again, she isn't in the show physically, but she does have a spiritual impact, if you want to put, or emotional impact on certain characters. But again, I do not think that Amanda's death was a suicide, because I didn't like the way she was departed from the show anyway. I did think her character had a lot of untouched potential. Most people only seen this crazy psychopath. But again, I just feel like Amanda's character really did have untapped potential that could have brought a lot more to the series. So again, I know this video is a little long, but again, it's just one of those subjects that I've been asked about for a long time, and I'm finally glad that I'm able to verbally express my thoughts with you all. So in the comment sections below, let me know, do you think that Amanda's death was a suicide, or was it a homicide? And if you think it was a homicide, who do you think was Amanda's killer? So again, thank you for tuning in, and also be sure to follow me on my Facebook Have and Have Not page, as well as Twitter, and I will see you all in the next video.